to the Experience Darden podcast. I'm your host, Brett Twitty, and you are listening to a new episode. On this episode of the podcast, I'm excited to share my recent conversation with Chris Egbert. Chris is a recent graduate in our full-time MBA class of 2024, and he and I recently connected to talk more about his background, his decision to pursue an MBA, how he explored his interest in healthcare at Darden, and so much more. I think you're really going to enjoy this episode. As always, if this conversation is helpful for you, please like this episode and subscribe to Experience Darden so you never miss an update. And remember, you can always check the episode description for links to Darden blogs, social channels, and more. Now, without further ado, here's my conversation with Chris Egbert. Chris, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Brett. Great to be on here.
All right. Well, thank you so much for your time. How's everything going? How are you doing?
Things are good. Yeah. Graduated, I guess, almost exactly 2 months ago, and haven't been doing a whole lot. Been doing some travel, seeing a lot of friends across the country. And yesterday I arrived in Europe for a 3-week-long trip. Started in Paris, and now I'm talking to you from Montenegro.
Must be nice to be on this side of the experience, to have a little bit of downtime before you start your job.
Yeah, not a whole lot of downtime while you're actually at Darden. Obviously, there's the fall break, the spring break, but summertime for the internship, and then throughout the school year, you're pretty busy. Even though it's not the same type of busy when you're working and you have, day-to-day duties, you have a lot of socializing and hanging out with the friends, going to class. So it's definitely chilled out quite a bit since graduating.
Well, we so appreciate you taking some time out of your trip to talk with us here on the podcast. So before we get too far into our conversation, let's talk a little bit more about you. So tell us who you are and your background.
Yeah, so actually born and raised in Western Pennsylvania in a town north of Pittsburgh called Newcastle. Went down to DC for undergrad at George Washington University. I was a political science major. I did ROTC there. And upon graduating, I commissioned into the Army Reserve, but also started a career simultaneously in consulting. So I worked in public sector consulting in the DC area for a small firm, and then I moved over to Deloitte Consulting, where I was in their government and public sector practice. Really enjoyed it, really enjoyed government work. I was a political science major, it kind of makes sense for me. But I decided, I need that formal business education if I want to take my career to the next step. And I knew I wanted to kind of explore the business world outside of government consulting. So I started looking into MBA programs, and Darden kind of came right to the top of my list because, as you know, the Darden building and the Deloitte building in Roslyn are pretty much right next to each other. So it was kind of like a match made in heaven making that transition.
Yeah, we're just a block, I think, from the Deloitte building here in Roslyn. I walk by it every day to go to work. So just right down the street. Is an MBA something you had thought about for a while, or something that occurred to you as you got started with your career? How long had you been thinking about an MBA?
Yeah, so I hadn't even really understood the MBA, experience, because it is an experience, the application process and all the things that go into it, until I was at my first job. And I started looking around at the more senior people at my firm, and I said, these people have MBAs from all these top programs, around the country. What are these MBA programs all about? So I started to research, started to do, a little bit of digging, day to day. And I was like, wow, this is actually something I definitely want to do. So probably about a year into my career, I started thinking, hey, like, I got to start studying and start researching these programs and start looking at them. Because it is like some people do it quick, but it really is like a 2-year process. The MBA application journey between like starting studying I did the GRE and then actually submitting applications, doing interviews and getting in. So I definitely started early in my career, but it was definitely not something on my radar until after undergrad.
Yeah, I appreciate you noting the timeline. That actually takes people maybe a couple of years or so to kind of work through this process between preparing yourself for a test and doing the research, figuring out the schools where you want to apply, working through the applications, and then finding out what your options are, and then of course researching even further those options, maybe doing some visits. I mean, it's a process. So, what is it about Darden that really resonated with you?
Yeah, so I had spent pretty much from when I went to undergrad in DC at George Washington University until I left for Darden in the DC metropolitan area. I lived in Richmond for a little bit. And one thing that always came up was UVA, UVA, UVA. I didn't know a whole lot about UVA before starting to research MBA programs, but then once I started to discover more and more, I was like, this seems like a place that would be a great fit for me. Um, George Washington University is right in the city in DC. I felt like I didn't really have the true college experience. I wasn't in a small college town. I was in downtown of a major city. And Darden was appealing because I had visited Charlottesville and I was like, this is a quintessential college experience. And I didn't do it the first go around, but I figured the MBA was a good time to, get a redo and get to have that true college experience. And as a consultant, Darden has a reputation for being a consulting school. So it felt like something that would come very naturally to me. The case method was something that I was very excited about. It was pretty much what I was doing day to day at Deloitte. I was, getting problems and solving them and coming up with answers and working in small teams. And that's really what the case method is. And that's kind of what the Darden experience is. So it felt very natural. And I just had to move an hour down the road. So it was kind of the best of both worlds. It was a school that really appealed to me. It was nearby. And everyone who I met in the community in the lead up was just wonderful. And they couldn't say enough nice things about the program. So when I got in, I was pretty much jumping up and down because, like I said, it's a long process applying for MBAs. So, the 18 months where I was really focused on that kind of culminated in my Darden acceptance, and I was thrilled again.
So you come to Darden, you're a brand new first year student. What's that adjustment like to be in an MBA program?
Yeah, I think it's unique, especially for people, maybe not the incoming classes now, but for me, it was 2022. And I had just spent from the beginning of COVID until when I came to campus in Darden working remote. So I was basically remote from the start of the pandemic all the way up until the time I left my job to come to Darden. So one of the first things was I was in person with people every day of the week, just like surrounded by people, socializing all the time after all the isolation that was the pandemic. I kind of emerged from that into the most social experience you can have. So it was definitely a little overwhelming at first. You're meeting at orientation, there's 345, 400, 350 classmates that you have to meet. And you're learning names, you're hearing people's backgrounds, you're hearing all these incredible stories of what we did before Darden. So it can be a little overwhelming. But then as the weeks go on, you start to, find little groups. You have your learning team, you have your section, you have all of these kind of interactions with folks on a day-to-day basis, and you start forming these relationships. And then kind of by the end of the first quarter, you feel like you're a real part of the community and you feel like, that crazy whirlwind of the beginning of Darden is over. And now you kind of start to settle in. So it was definitely a little jarring at first, but with time, it ended up being, probably my most memorable stretch of Darden is that first 7-week quarter.
Feels like everything happens pretty fast there. You get to Charlottesville. Did you move down, I guess, a few weeks prior to the start of school and get settled in?
Yeah, so I actually, so Army Reserve has a yearly requirement. You have to do like 2 weeks in the summer. And I basically rolled right from my 2 weeks in the summer at the beginning of August. I finished on Sunday and then I started Darden on Monday. So I did not have a lot of time to really ease myself in. I was trying to squeeze a lot into a very tight window, and it led me to working basically like, I don't know, 20 straight days. But it was worth it to get the stuff done that I needed to get done. But it was a little strange rolling right from that into the first day of orientation. But it went well, and the rest is history. I graduated, so I guess it didn't go too bad.
Yeah, I feel like you have a lot that comes after you all at the same time, right? You're meeting a lot of new people. To your point, I remember that sort of start of school 2022. Even for folks who were on the staff, it wasn't like we had been around, tons and tons of people. It was still an adjustment, I think, for everybody getting used to being back and having all like large groups and back to quote unquote normal operations. That was an adjustment, and you obviously have schoolwork to do, and then career stuff starts pretty soon too. So there's a lot on your plate all at once.
God, yeah, I was just talking to someone entering their MBA right now, and I was talking about how you kind of get there and you get your feet wet and you start to do the MBA, and then if you're recruiting consulting, it's like boom, like first, second week in September, you're all of a sudden recruiting. So like right when you feel like you're getting your feet under you, you kind of throw a new thing into the equation, and now you're recruiting, and it feels like the most important thing you've ever done once you start recruiting. So it adds another element of stress, but it all pays off in the end once you actually get the job.
Well, what section were you?
So I was Section A. Go Lions. Got to do our fun cheer every morning and got to let out a roar, which was definitely interesting. When you get to section, I wasn't really sure what to expect. And then we get taught the cheer from the previous class, and we start every class that way. And it's like, I did not expect something like that coming to an MBA program. I can't say I ever did anything like that in undergrad. But honestly, it's one of those things that it really helps bond you with your classmates. You know, there's a sense of like this shared thing. Everyone's in Section A, and you have this kind of, in Section A, you have a lion, right? A little stuffed lion to rally around. And it seems a little silly at first, but it really is something that you end up taking a lot of pride in, and you have connections with your section long after the core classes are over.
So as you mentioned, as you were telling your story, you worked in consulting, federal consulting before coming to Darden. You had this interest in consulting, started recruiting for consulting. Did you remain interested in consulting? Would that remain your career interest as you went through the program?
Yeah, so I knew kind of early on at Darden through some core cases and some work I did prior that I wanted to be involved in healthcare in some way. So I did a little bit of split recruiting. So I recruited for some consulting and then for some healthcare roles. The role I ended up on for my summer internship was actually as a product marketing manager at a large medical device company in Naples, Florida called Arthrex. And what they do is basically sell implants like shoulder replacements, hip replacements. They sell all the parts for spine surgery, and they market those and sell them to surgeons who are actually performing the surgeries. So I ended up in a product marketing role there, and I spent my summer in Naples, Florida, which was incredibly hot, but some really good experience. And I got to really, dip my toe in healthcare because I never really formally worked in healthcare before, only some healthcare adjacent projects and consulting. So I spent my summer there, really enjoyed it. I got to go into actual cadaveric surgery. So I was in surgery with cadavers with surgeons, actually seeing how these products were used. And what I found very interesting is, as opposed to my job in consulting, where I was kind of helping solve other people's problems, working for the company that was actually producing the product, we were helping these surgeons, get the best product available to help make people's lives better. So, having a bad shoulder, someone comes in, they ask their doctor, like, what do we do? They recommend the shoulder replacement, and then we deliver that shoulder replacement to the surgeon so they can put that in the person and fix their shoulder. So everything I did in consulting, it was kind of it wasn't tangible. It was hard to feel the impact we were making. But in the summer, seeing the surgeons use our products, it was really eye-opening for me. And I realized I wanted to be involved in healthcare because at the end of the day, what healthcare is doing is making people better and improving lives. So really enjoyed my summer, but I couldn't see myself long-term in the role I was in. So I decided to come back to Darden second year and re-recruit for healthcare and life sciences consulting. And that's how I eventually landed my full-time position at Oliver Wyman in their health and life sciences practice based in the Boston area.
Well, I'm curious about your interest in healthcare. How did you realize that was maybe somewhere where you wanted to focus some of your career attention?
Yeah, so as I was thinking about all the career paths and I was going through the Darden core curriculum, I was thinking about my personal life and how the healthcare system has affected me. I've had a lot of family have very positive outcomes from the healthcare system. My mother had lung cancer when I was an undergrad, and she had oncologist that walked her through thing and told her options and performed the surgery to move the tumor in her lung. And then she went through some chemotherapy and eventually she was cancer free. And to me, that impact that the doctors and the healthcare system had on her, and selfishly me, getting to see my mom go from a cancer diagnosis to eventually being cancer free, I knew that was something that I wanted to be a part of. Um, it was a little too late for me to be a doctor, and I didn't see myself working in a clinical space. But healthcare and healthcare business seemed like the next best thing. So, as I enter this next chapter in consulting, every time I'm working on a project to, say, introduce or like for a large pharmaceutical company, if they're trying to find a way to bring a new cancer drug to market, if I can help be a part of that and help bring, some revolutionary treatment to market, um, at the end of the day, that's going to be something that makes me feel very fulfilled. So that's kind of what led me to the healthcare space.
How were you able to explore this healthcare interest at Darden? Because this is a question we get from a lot of prospective students. Darden actually has a healthcare initiative that's underway, lots of exciting energy around healthcare. But I want to hear more specifically about your experience. How were you able to pursue this healthcare interest during your time at Darden?
Yeah, so Darden is great for healthcare, and the healthcare initiative is something I'm very excited about. So in core curriculum, you have your marketing, accounting, finance classes. In those classes, I want to say almost every one of our core classes had at least 1 to 2 cases on marketing, or sorry, not marketing, on healthcare. So those were some of the cases that stood out to me as a first year. All of the healthcare cases I found incredibly interesting. And as I kind of explored it in all of these different disciplines, I realized it was something I was very interested in. And then I started to look at electives as a second year to make sure I could explore it a little more, especially as I was, rolling into my summer internship. So Darden offers a number of great electives. We have a number of great faculty who have real life healthcare experience. Paul Mathern, who's a doctor and was the chief medical officer at UVA. I took a class with him. He offers 2 classes as a second year, and he has 30 years experience as a clinician in the hospital. And you have this opportunity to be in a classroom with him every day, learning about the real world problems that he was facing in the hospital setting. And then you have folks like Vivian Riefberg, who was a healthcare partner at Kinsey, absolutely incredible person who helped teach me about a lot of things, but especially about the insurance and payer space in healthcare. So there's just a lot of expertise available at Darden. There's a lot of folks interested in doing fun projects outside the classroom. So Mark Ruggiano, who I'm actually working with right now, post-graduation, we did an independent study together where I helped write a case on basically my summer experience in healthcare marketing. And that case was actually taught in our healthcare marketing class, Q4 of second year. So there's a lot of ways to get involved in healthcare at Darden. It's in the classroom, it's outside the classroom. I took a class at the law school on the Affordable Care Act, which is kind of something new that they're offering. I really enjoyed that. I got to be in the classroom with the healthcare lawyer, and I got to be in the classroom with Vivian Briefberg, who I mentioned earlier. They co-taught the class, and got to learn all about the Affordable Care Act. And it was kind of capped off with a big conference that we hosted at Sam's Family Grounds in Roslyn. And we had all types of folks who were involved in the passage of the Affordable Care Act from the Obama administration come back and kind of relive what it was like getting the bill passed and talking about what the future of healthcare would look like with the Affordable Care Act. So a ton of ways to get involved in healthcare. I just spat out a lot there. But I think Darden is really focusing on expanding what they offer in healthcare, whether it be from a curriculum standpoint or from career opportunities. And I'm really excited to see what these future classes have to hold.
Yeah, that's a really cool example, the Affordable Care Act class that you took. I remember when the Affordable Care Act event was up here, Sands Family Grounds here in Roslyn. That was, I mean, amazing to have all those people in a room to be part of that. That had to be, for somebody who's interested in healthcare, had to be an incredible experience.
It was truly incredible. I was in awe the entire time. Some of the folks that they had there were incredible, and it was Chatham House rules. So kind of what went on in the conference stayed in the conference. So people were very candid, and it was really a great experience. You know, to hear what these people really thought and were thinking in the time while they were fighting hard to pass the Affordable Care Act. So
Yeah, it's still very much in the news these days.
Yep.
Healthcare 1/6 and growing of the GDP, I think, and I mean, obviously, it touches everybody's lives. You think about just the impact that you can have as someone in the healthcare industry. To your earlier point, it seems significant.
Yeah, absolutely. It's significant. And I think, one of the classes I took at Darden was called Challenges in Healthcare in the United States. We do have a lot of challenges with our healthcare system. We spend more than anyone in the world, GDP per capita, on healthcare. And we don't have the best results to show for it. So another reason I'm so interested in healthcare is because there's a lot of things that can be fixed. And where there's problems, that's kind of where consultants come into play. So I'm very excited to be entering the industry, and I think there's a lot of unique challenges I'm going to get to work on in consulting.
Well, Chris, were you involved with any clubs and organizations during your time at Darden? Anything extracurricularly that you would want to mention here?
Yeah, I was. So I was the president of the golf club. Uh, I can't recommend anyone who's listening who's interested in Darden and interested in golf. The golf culture at Darden is absolutely top tier. We have Birdwood Golf Course right off grounds. It's a 5-minute drive. I can't explain enough how great it is to have such a great golf course 5 minutes away. Um, they have a student membership available. There's always students looking to get out and play golf, from the beginner level to the folks who play, multiple days a week, like I did at Darden. So I really enjoyed being part of the golf club and being the president. Also, Community Consultants of Darden, I think, is a great organization and a great way to get involved in the community, but also to kind of stretch your consulting skills a little bit. I was coming from consulting, so I felt like I could do Community Consultants of Darden and I could really add value. And I felt like, I did some good work for some organizations in the community, but I really just learned a ton from both my peers and the clients we worked with. So overall, thought Community Consultants of Darden is something very unique that Darden offers, and something I found to be one of my favorite experiences at all of Darden. So those were kind of like my two big things that I was really involved in, um, among a lot of things. Darden has, great student-run organizations, and all of them are very, very well run. I have to say, just around all of these presidents of all these different clubs, I'm always impressed by how much time and effort they put in hosting great events, to creating learning opportunities for folks in their club. It was really inspiring, and it made me want to do a better job as the golf club president.
Know you've got a lot to look forward to in the coming months, but if there's anything in particular that you're excited about? I mean, you got your trip here, you got the start of your career, but anything that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, I'm really excited about the next couple of weeks in Europe. That's very exciting. And then I get back, and honestly, what I'm probably most excited for the rest of summer is just spending time with Darden classmates before getting, back into the work world. Um, it says a lot about Darden that a lot of the things I'm doing on weekends from now until October, when I start my job, is spending time with Darden classmates. I think Darden is a place where folks find lifelong friendships. I can certainly say the same for me. I found a partner at Darden, and I've made tons of great friends, and I'm just looking forward to spending time with them. And then eventually starting work in October. Very excited about starting work, but definitely not as excited about giving up all this free time I have right now. Um, but no, it's great. If I could go back and start Darden over again on day one, I think I might actually sign up and do it. So I can't say enough good things about the program.
Well, Chris, last question for you here. We probably have some listeners, I assume, that are interested in a healthcare career, thinking about a path into healthcare. What would you share with them about Darden? Any advice for them that you would encourage them to think about as they take this next step?
Yeah, I'd say keep an open mind. Healthcare has a million different paths you can follow. Keep an open mind. Don't close off any doors to potential paths that you think you might be interested in, and go out and ask folks questions. Honestly, one of the biggest things for me at Darden was, once you cross that barrier of being nervous to chat with people, once you start asking folks questions and get them talking, you're going to learn a lot of things. So whether that be your classmates who worked in healthcare or have passions in healthcare, or professors. My independent study that I did with Mark Ruggiano, it started with an email and then it led to a conversation. And then, we're still working together to this day. And I would have never gotten to that point if I hadn't, just asked that first question. So ask questions, explore opportunities, and just make the most of it.
Yeah, I love that advice about don't be afraid to put yourself out there and to ask questions, get to know people. You just never know where those conversations are going to lead. So, well, Chris, thank you so much. I will say we get to put a new pin in the map here for the podcast. We have not talked to someone who's called in from Montenegro before. So that's exciting for us. But congratulations on everything and enjoy the next couple months.
Absolutely. I really appreciate it, Brett. I'm glad I could come on.
And that was my conversation with Chris Egbert, a recent graduate in our full-time MBA class of 2024. As always, if you have any comments, suggestions, requests, anything you'd like for us to cover here on the podcast, we're all ears. We can be reached at Darden, that's Darden, @virginia.edu. Till next time, stay safe, be well, and thanks for listening.